I've been saying this for a long time. This group, especially on the defensive line, is about more discipline. About you got to read your keys. You got to play two gap at times. You got to stay in your rushing lanes. You got to be aware of the screen. It's not as fun if you're a defensive lineman. Your probably statistics are going to be down if you're a defensive lineman.
You got your Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. McMullen hanging with you. JM, you did touch on something last segment that I want to get back to about, or maybe it was even the segment before, about Jonathon Gannon. And one of the things that he has kind of dropped the football on is that he hasn't been able to bring his star defensive players onto his side and buy into his system and believe that the way they're playing is the right way to play. And the biggest one of all, of course, is Fletcher Cox. I said this yesterday here on Birds 365. I had no issues with Fletcher Cox speaking after the game yesterday. I was glad to hear from Fletcher Cox, as a matter of fact. And even though he did,
So was I.
Yeah, it's more so you than me because that's your ballywick. He did question certain things. He did say, I don't cover screens, which is basically putting the DC on blast. But he also did so with a little respect by saying, you have to play what's called. And he didn't completely just say, screw this system stinks. But he pointed out enough to let you know that he's not happy with it. I thought Fletcher actually did a really good job in being able to make his point without being disrespectful to the organization, to the coaching staff. When are we going to hear from Fletcher again? Do you now put the request in for Fletcher for weekly updates on what he thinks about the system that the Eagles have? Are they going to make him available? It was pretty telling what Fletcher said yesterday. Are you going to get a regular dose of that?
Oh yeah, Fletcher talks every week, so I mean he'll be there. It'll be a story. It'll be a far bigger story if he doesn't show up, and the Eagles know that. So, yeah, Fletcher's one of those guys that talks every week, no matter what. And if he doesn't, that becomes the story, and that creates even a bigger issue for the Eagles and Jonathon Gannon and Nick Sirianni. So, look, there's veteran players who are going to tell the truth. Jason Kelsey's one of those guys. Jason Kelsey's frustrated. You saw it on the field.
Yeah.
Now, Jason does a better job sort of filtering himself on the podium and things like that. Now, he'll rip Ben Simmons and, he'll talk about overriding things, but he's never going to rip the team. But he's not happy. And this, again, I go all the way back and I did it. This was such a difficult situation with Nick Sirianni to begin with. And then amongst the veteran players who had success under the old regime, remember, these guys are making Pro Bowls. They win a Super Bowl with Doug Peterson, Jim Schwartz, Frank Reich, all the coordinators that came after. They had a lot of success. People forget quickly, and they don't forget. So when you're Fletcher Cox, for instance, and you say, and that was telling, I don't play screens. Well, no, you do play screens. You didn't play screens under Jim Schwartz because Jim Schwartz told you, don't worry about it. Just go get the quarterback. I've been saying this for a long time. This group, especially on the defensive line, is about more discipline, about you got to read your keys. You got to play two gap at times. You got to stay in your rushing lanes. You got to be aware of the screen. It's not as fun if you're a defensive lineman. Your probably statistics are going to be down if you're a defensive lineman. So you got to buy in. He hasn't bought in. And he hasn't bought in because he had a lot of success under the previous regime. And same thing with Jason Kelsey on the offensive side with the frustration. He doesn't want to play this offense, but he's a good soldier. And that's why this was really, really difficult for Nick Sirianni, especially with the veteran players. Now, as the roster continues to turn over and you get less and less of those guys, it'll be easier for them.
Speaking of less and less of those guys, yesterday was Joe Flacco's day to be moved on. I asked you after they made the Zach Ertz trade, would the Eagles do more selling? And the fact that I was a little put off by the way Howie Roseman stated. I knew it was coming. It wasn't like, did he really just say that? Well, of course he's going to say that. He's not going to admit that he's going out there selling. He doesn't want to lose his leverage with other teams. He doesn't want to lose his locker room, where the guys who are still dedicated to being here and winning this year go, wait a minute, we're not trying to win anymore. So I get that he had to say it, but it was just the way that he said that bothered me greatly. Yesterday was a small sell, not a big sell, not going to move the needle a ton, but to get a draft pick, not all that far of a different draft pick than the one they got for Zach Ertz, who did a heck of a lot more in this town for the Philadelphia Eagles than Joe Flacco ever did. And the compensation is comparable. We still got now we got 7 days. It is 1 week from today, John McMullen, and we will be here on the air day of the trade deadline. They still got more sales in them?
Yeah, I think so. I think Andre Dillard is probably the key one. And we'll see. I mean, if they want to, if they have confidence that Lane's going to be here, but Lane fits in that category of just what I said, veteran guy under the old coaching staff. But if they think he's going to be here long term, there's no need for Andre Dillard. He's at least proven himself to a certain degree to where there's a bunch of teams in this league that need left tackles badly. The Eagles could get, I'm thinking a day 2 pick for him. I'm thinking a 3rd round pick. And if they can do that, that's you were talking about a conditional 7th round pick when this season started. That's how much his value has increased. So if the Eagles can get that, you might want to do it. We've talked about Steve Nelson a lot for the similar situation of what you just saw with Joe Flacco, but to a greater degree because he's playing, but he's not going to be here next year. And if you're not going to compete and you can get something of value, and there's so many contenders that need cornerbacks, why not do something? Why not do something?
I know I've never said this with you before. I've never said it on Birds 365. I've surely said it on my radio gigs before. My father and I used to bet on everything. We used to have friendly bets, and we would bet $1. No matter what, it was $1. If we bet on anything, it was $1. It was always $1, and we would actually pay off each other. We'd let a running tab go for a couple of weeks, a month, whatever it needed to be before we see each other. But then first thing you do when I see my father, if we had been apart and seen him for 6 months, whatever, running tab, first thing you do, you got to pay. So we bet $1 on anything. Raindrops coming down the window. He'd take one, I'd take the other. For $1, you're on. Okay, so I want to go $1 with you. There's no way Andre Dillard's getting a day 2 pick. No shot. No chance. No way. No how. Chances are it's going to be a push between you and I. He won't get dealt. But I will bet you my $1.
Well, I'm not. See, now you're putting me. I would think it's more likely a 4th rounder. I'll bet you a 4th rounder. But I think they're hopeful they can get a day 2 pick. I've started to hear day 2 pick. But a lot of that is, even if you go from before the season to right now into a 4th round pick, and maybe it's a conditional 4th up to a 3, something of that nature. That's, you can see the giant leap he's made from playing those 3 games, whatever it was. But it's got more to do, Jody, man. This league, and you've heard me say it 100 million times, this league is offensive line deficient. There are so many teams in this league with crappy offensive lines, and they see anybody with any semblance of ability, and they're like, oh, get me this guy. They can get a 4th round pick. I'll bet you $1 on the 4th round pick.
Okay. Well,
And it might even
said day
be
2, so that's why I offered a 3.
no.
I'll give you
they're
a
trying to
dollar
get
on
day
both
2.
the 3rd round pick and a 4th round pick, and I'll go you one better, a 5th round pick. I think they're looking at a 6th for Dillard.
Well, if they trade Andre Dillard for a 6th, yeah, I'll give you 5 $1 bets. They're not going to trade him if that's all
If
they
it's
can
a
get.
6, they say no. We use the 1st round.
They're not going to trade.
That's too much admitting that they overvalued Andre Dillard.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it would have been that case if he didn't play. If he didn't play, they might have just taken that 6th round pick and say, "We'll get what we can get." But the fact that he played those 3 games and played at a competent level in this league is important. I mean, there are just terrible left tackles in this league that are starters. And there are teams desperate for left tackles. It has more to do with the other teams than the Eagles.
Yeah, I wasn't all that impressed with what he did during the 3 games he was in there. He was in there solely because Mailata got hurt. Otherwise, he never would have gotten in there. And I don't think he raised his value all that much. And again, I'm not watching coaches tape, but neither are you. We can lean on Pro Football Focus if we want. I just watch the game over afterwards, watch it once live, and then watch it again afterward. Nothing jumped off the page for me for Andre Dillard. So
I think you're too harsh on Andre. I think he
I
played
think
pretty
you're
well
too
in
slow
those games.
on Andre, and you and I see the player completely differently. I think he can't play. The other guy you and I disagree on is Derek Barnett. Can't play. He can't play. Period. Can't play. But the Eagles continue to trot him out there, and it boggles my mind when he continues to contribute next to nothing to their games. Yeah, some guys, when I get perturbed that they haven't lived up to expectations, I just write them off. I've written off.
But I think that's the thing. You're writing the guy off because of what happened. But you're not looking at it objectively and how he played in those 3 particular games. So, all right, let me bring up, we'll use Pro Football Focus as the tiebreaker because they got no dog in the hunt.
True.
Right? So if I bring up Andre, I'll bring up Andre first. So he's 32 of 77 at tackle. So to give you an indication, Lane Johnson, they just don't differentiate right tackle or left tackle.
Right.
Lane Johnson's 30. Andre's 32. Jordan's 15. So Jordan's having a really good year. And Jordan's better, and Jordan deserved to win. But he played well when you compare him again, the rest of the league. That's what I'm saying. If you think about, there's 32 teams, they each have 2 tackles. That's 64. You're in the top half of starters in this league for what he performed. And again, small sample size. As for Derek Barnett, he's not playing well, which is what I said. They have him, let me bring him up, 67 of 110, which is not good enough. Milton Williams would be the guy replacing him, 109 out of 119, because they have him graded with the interior alignment. 109 out of 119. Right, I mean, Milton's been stinking it up.
I'm talking about moving Milton Williams outside because that's what they sold us on. He can play both inside and outside. He has played both inside and outside. But I'm just saying they grade him in interior because he's played more in the interior. Right. Either way, he stunk up the joint. I'd like to see him get in to the game playing outside, and Derek Barnett having a comfortable seat on the bench. Derek, feel free to dig right in there. And
you'll get. I mean, he's not going to be here next year. So there's another guy they'd like to trade, but he makes $10 million. So that makes it more difficult.
Yeah, no, they no way they're getting a day 2 pick for Derek Barnett. I don't think they're getting
not with that contract.
Pick. I don't think anybody's picking him up. All right, I see Ricky Ricardo is ready to join us. We're going to punch him up in just a couple of minutes here on Birds 365.